Amazing transformation revealed. Black teen unexpectedly calls his dad. The U.S. Attorney General. Jamari Johnson sat in the dim light of his cluttered bedroom, walls plastered with posters of social justice icons. The weight of expectations hung audibly in the air, mingled with the faint sound of passing sirens outside. The news of his father being the U.S. Attorney General felt surreal, a truth wrapped in layers of disbelief and hope. A wild intertwining of emotions churned within him. How could the man, so far removed from his life, suddenly be a beacon of possibility? Would sharing blood undo years of absence? Heart racing, he still hesitated, considering the significance of this moment. The grip on his cell phone tightened, every heartbeat echoing louder in his ears as he steeled himself for the call that could, quite literally, change everything. The internal battle was fierce. He had always seen himself as his grandmother's legacy, a bright point in the chaos around them. Yet now that light felt faint. Self-doubt whispered degrading tales of worthlessness, drowning out the dreams he'd harbored. How selfish was he to want something from a man who had never been there? And what if his father rejected him, viewing him as nothing but a reminder of his own failures? The staggering idea of living in the shadow of a parent who would only see his shortcomings surged a cold wave of fear straight through him. After a few agonizing minutes, Jamari, with trembling fingers, finally dialed the number found deep within the recesses of the internet. This move had ramifications beyond just a simple phone call. It could symbolize a crack in the armor of his disillusionment, the very armor built from years of his mother's absence. His mind flashed chaotic images of high school friends posting their triumphs, scurrying past him in their pursuit of success, leaving him anchored in an endless cycle of wanting more. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. And so the call connected, but there he was suspended in uncertainty. The connection crackled, signaling a different kind of distance. What would he say? How could he find the words to articulate this emotional tempest brewing inside him? Would he stumble as he tried to explain to a stranger with his own blood running in righteousness above him the contentions of his heart? With each second, the pressure mounted. The silence stretched like an elastic band, threatening to snap at any moment. Jamari's palms were slick, his breath shallow and irregular. He wanted to scream, to shove away this horrible mix of emotions, of wanting acceptance and fearing rejection. What if his father didn't want him? Would he be just as disposable as he felt? Just as the tension felt unbearable, a resolve surged forth. He needed this connection to be seen, to know that part of him mattered. As they dove deeper into the conversation, Jamari felt layers of his silent pain unfolding, fragile and exposed. Would his father even acknowledge his existence or deem it not worth the energy? The unpredictability hovered like dark clouds, ready to release a storm of disappointment or, more optimistically, a glimmer of reconciliation. The truth slithered between them, asking a question he knew would shape his very story. Would he, with all that weight on him, reclaim his own narrative or be left grappling in shadows of mediocrity? The thread connecting them was thin, yet potent, and, as the dialogue intensified, Jamari stood at the precipice of his destiny. What would this father, who was once someone to admire from afar, reveal? The conversation began, but the real discovery was yet to unfold, leaving readers at the edge of an emotional cliff, yearning for more. As Jamari listened intently to his father's voice, an overwhelming blend of anticipation and anxiety enveloped him. He could hear the confident, authoritative undertone that defined his father's public persona, and yet there was a softer tremor in his speech that made Jamari wonder if this man, who had once felt like a distant figure, could perhaps grasp the complexity of his own struggle. Yet even as hope began to flicker, doubt crept in again. Was this just a facade? Would the man on the other end truly see him as his son, or would he continue to represent a life untouched by paternal affection? The conversation inadvertently shifted from casual tidings to the hard truths they both had skirted around. Jamari took a shaky breath and finally blurted out the question that had been clawing at him since the moment he dialed. "Why did you leave?" The silence that followed was deafening, stretching and straining until he thought he might suffocate under its weight. Had he pushed too hard? Too soon? "I was young and scared," his father finally replied, tone steady but layered with untold regrets. "I didn't know how to be a parent. My career took off, and I thought it was for the best." Hearing those words felt like a slap in the face. A devastating mixture of sympathy and frustration surged within him. How many times had Jamari imagined a father who could have been there, who could have guided him, taught him, or simply listened? "I needed you," Jamari said, his voice firm, but it shook with emotion. "I still need you." What came next was unexpected. Instead of defensiveness, there was acknowledgement. "I know I can't make it right, but I want to try if you give you that chance." This simple admission sparked something deep within Jamari, a combination of anger and a sliver of optimism. Could this be the turning point in his life? However, alongside the hope were questions thorny, tangled questions about trust and vulnerability. Could he allow this man into his life after all those years of absence? Each decision felt monumental, a pivotal moment in a narrative that had seemed so locked in place. The barriers he had constructed began to tremble, and as he leaned into the conversation, he could almost sense his growth taking shape and awakening from the passive role he had enforced upon himself. They exchanged more words. Jamari realized he had skills and desires ignited by this interaction. He articulated his dreams for the future, his passion for law and social justice, inspired by the very ideals for which his father stood. Hearing his thoughts validated for the first time washed over him like rain on parched land. And in that moment, Jamari stumbled upon a revelation he hadn't acknowledged before. He was more than just the son of someone important. He had the potential to make his own mark, to carve a path distinct from the shadows of his father's choices. But as elation brewed, a dark undercurrent surged back, a reminder of the complexities that lay ahead. Trust couldn't be gifted, it had to be earned. And he wondered if his father had even begun to grasp the depths of the hurt caused by years of silence and absence. Jamari inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the upcoming decisions press heavily against his heart. "I need to think about this," he finally said, carefully choosing his words. It was time to reclaim agency in his own narrative, not just as a boy seeking approval, but as a young man demanding respect. But would his father prove worthy of that respect? The dialogue continued. Yet now, Jamari focused on articulating his boundaries and expectations, slowly shifting the conversation from the past to the possible futures. As the call drew to a close, Jamari hung up feeling a mixture of empowerment and uncertainty. Perhaps this was the genesis of something significant, yet the final chapter was far from written. What lay ahead? Would he find the courage to truly confront his father's past and forge a new relationship? Or was he stepping into yet another cycle of disappointment? The heaviness of his thoughts only deepened as he stared at the silence in his room, holding both promise and the specter of unanswered questions. In the days that followed the phone call, Jamari found himself in a state of continuous reflection, caught in the current of uncertainty that followed an upheaval in his understanding of family. Each morning began with a sharp bite of reality, the implications of his father's words nagging at him like a relentless itch. He was aware that his identity, previously tied to resentment and a desire to escape, was now intertwined with ambition and questions of legacy. He spent hours contemplating his next steps, each hour a trial of patience and self-discovery. Jamari's dreams of future in law, once a whisper in the back of his mind, began to echo louder with clarity. Mentors had encouraged him to embrace this path, but it always felt diluted by the shadow of his father's absence. Now he pondered whether he could take that path boldly, forging ahead not just in defiance of his father's absence, but in pursuit of his own version of justice and truth. Jamari enrolled in a community college course on constitutional law. It was an impulsive decision born from a thirst for knowledge and a need to understand his place in a system that felt abstract and daunting. The classroom buzzed with the ambitions of others, each student envisioning their impact on the world. Jamari felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps he would be a part of that change, not tied down by familial legacies or expectations, but propelled by his own aspirations. Sitting in the lecture hall, he was struck by the words his professor spoke about justice and representation. These concepts felt like the lifeblood of his awakening. Jamari scribbled notes fervently, ideas racing through his mind as images of a future where he stood before a courtroom, arguing for the voiceless, filled his imagination. Yet, the excitement was met with a wave of trepidation. What if he ventured into this world only to be met with disappointment again? He could not shake the gnawing fear that his father's unsteady attempt at rekindling their relationship might lead to another cycle of abandonment in his life's narrative. Would he be prepared to face that disappointment again? One evening, after a particularly stimulating class, Jamari left the building, the cool air wrapping around him like an embrace. He decided to walk home, letting thoughts expand in the space his surroundings provided. He marveled at the way the streetlights flickered on, illuminating the path ahead, an unspoken metaphor for his own journey. As he turned the corner, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his father. "I know I need to earn your trust. Let's talk more about this, your future, my past, everything. I'm here." Jamari's heart raced with a tumultuous mix of annoyance and curiosity. Could this be an opportunity to confront the gaping wounds of abandonment and disappointment head-on? Would he have the strength to ask the hard questions that had burdened him for so long? The potential for growth sat heavy upon his shoulders, urging him forward. Should he reply? The act of engagement was laden with risk, but also with potential for a deeper understanding of himself and the ties that bound him to a man he barely knew. In that moment, his decision crystallized within him. To confront his father while holding firm to his newfound sense of identity. He opened the message app, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. This moment was crucial, a confrontation with the architect of his struggles and the embodiment of his aspirations. As he crafted his reply, Jamari understood this was not just about allowing his father a place in his life, but about reclaiming his narrative entirely. And as he hit send, a new question crystallized in his mind. Was he ready to confront the truth that lay ahead, both in terms of his father's past and his own evolving identity? The journey was about to take an unexpected turn, one that could either illuminate the path forward or cast shadows over a lifetime of aspirations. The next morning, Jamari woke with an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread. The exchange with his father lingered in his mind like an unfinished melody, the notes not quite aligning into harmony. What did it mean to seek clarity from a figure who had long been a source of chaos in his life? As he prepared for class, the weight of his decision settled heavily on his shoulders. Each brushstroke across his teeth felt like a calculated movement, each minute of silence amplifying the enormity of their impending conversation. He had spent years crafting a shield against his father's influence, and now, with a mere message, the gates had been flung open, allowing a flood of uncertainty to surge in the classroom. Constitutional law had taken on a newfound intensity. His professor, a woman passionate about civil rights, spoke about landmark cases that invoked fierce debates of morality and justice. Jamari felt a connection, a resonance between the social principles she taught and his personal dilemma. He scribbled down case names and precedents, absorbing stories of people who had stood up against a system that often silenced the voices of the marginalized. As he pondered how these legal battles mirrored his own struggles, the thought pierced through his defenses. What if he, too, had the power to push forward against the setbacks in his life? After class, buoyed by a newfound conviction, he approached his professor, eager to contextualize his thoughts within these discussions. "Professor, do you think it's possible to reshape your story when others have defined it for you?" She paused, a flicker of understanding crossing her face. "That is a question of agency, Jamari. The legal system gives you tools to advocate for yourself and others. But remember, your story is yours to tell how you wield that power. That's what makes a difference." Her words sank deep, kindling a fire within him. Jamari realized he was straddling two worlds, the world of self-definition and the world shaped by others' expectations. Ready to embrace his own narrative, he left the college determined to confront not just his father, but also the fears that had kept him shackled. As the day ebbed into evening, Jamari felt his apprehension collide with an electric sense of urgency. Meeting his father would be a deliberate choice, a step toward rectifying the tangled affiliations between father and son, abandonment and ambition. Yet whispers of doubt still danced in his mind. He pondered the ramifications of this encounter, not just the possibility of strained reunion, but an intimate exposure of vulnerability. Jamari texted his father to set a time for their meeting. After hesitating for long moments, he sent, "I'm willing to talk, but I have questions. Questions you may not want to answer." The reply came back swiftly, "I wouldn't have it any other way." That evening, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the sky. Jamari stood at his window, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and fear. Each beat echoed with unresolved questions swirling through his mind, entangled with memories that were both comforting and painful. The looming confrontation forced him to evaluate his motivations carefully. Was he approaching this moment for validation, closure, or merely to voice his hurt? As he made his way to the cafe where they had agreed to meet, Jamari felt the stakes rise. His father was an enigma who had shaped the contours of his resentment, but perhaps also unlocked the door to a new understanding, a path toward healing. That he glanced at the approaching cafe, a facade of warm light against the encroaching darkness. It was now or never. He was stepping toward more than just a personal reconciliation. He was claiming his future, one difficult conversation at a time. As the bell above the door chimed, signaling his entry, Jamari braced himself for the unexpected. Anticipated revelations, unmasked truths, and perhaps the chance to redefine not just his relationship with his father, but, fundamentally, himself. The moment of truth was drawing near. Would confrontation heal the fractures in his identity, or would it deepen the scars? The cafe buzzed with the hum of conversation, muffled laughter, and the clink of mugs, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation. Jamari's heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the room, searching for the familiar, yet distant figure of his father. He could almost feel the weight of their history hovering in the air, a heavy fog that had not dissipated with time. This wasn't just about closure. It was about assertion, the reclamation of his narrative. He settled into a corner table, attempting to steady his breathing. The aroma of roasted coffee beans intermingled with the heady scent of baked goods, grounding him momentarily even as his thoughts spiraled. What questions should he prioritize? What truths lay heavy on his tongue, begging for expression? With each passing moment, he reminded himself of his professor's words. This was a chance to reclaim his story, an opportunity to confront the narrative his father had woven around him for years. He rattled off potential questions in his head, his father's absence, the moments of pain, the questions about legacy and responsibility, the drive for success that seemed forged in a crucible of resentment. Just as doubt began to creep back in, the cafe door swung open, and in walked a man who seemed unmoored in his own confidence. Jamari recognized him immediately, the subtle stature, the stoic expression, the iconic lawyerly aura that surrounded him like a cloak. His father settled at the table, and the air shifted as if acknowledging the tension at play. "Jamari," he greeted, his voice calm yet firm, loaded with intent. "Dad," Jamari replied. Careful to navigate the delicate bridge they were attempting to cross, he felt the urge to dive directly into the emotional depths, to pull apart the layers of misunderstanding. But he knew this was a conversation that required structure. I want to start by understanding why you didn't reach out all these years, he said, his voice steady, the vulnerability cloaked in determination. A flicker of surprise crossed his father's face, swiftly masked by a semblance of composed indifference. There were choices to make, paths to follow. I thought it was best for you, he attempted, but his words held the hollow ring of distance. Best for me? Jamari felt anger bubbling beneath the surface. You didn't even know me. What you thought was best was a choice I never had a say in. I was left wondering why I wasn't enough to fight for. The air seemed to thicken around them as recognition dawned on his father's features. He shifted uncomfortably, perhaps grappling with a reality he had long pushed aside. Jamari, let me finish, Jamari cut in, employing every ounce of control to steady his voice. I need to understand. Did you think that pursuing your career was more important than being there for your son? Because that is how it felt. He watched the flicker of conflict in his father's eyes, a mixture of shame and resolve. Jamari saw the cracks in the facade, the man beneath the title, and suddenly felt a surge of empathy mixed with anger. It was unsettling, yet illuminating. Was this what it meant to confront someone who had molded his life through absence? I chose a path that I thought would secure your future, his father countered defensively. But Jamari saw a hint of vulnerability creeping in. That may be true, Jamari countered, but it came at a price. You took away my chance to define who I could be with your decisions. That's where the real injury lies. Silence enveloped the table, thick and heavy. Jamari could feel their histories colliding, his father's professional burdens weighing against his own emotional scars. This was not just about asking questions anymore. It was about dismantling the walls each had built. Jamari realized this moment was more than a confrontation. It was a bridge, one he needed to cross, no matter how painful the journey might be. As they sat together, the walls of their conflict began to tremble. Jamari knew they would not resolve everything tonight, but perhaps he could begin to reforge the connection that had been lost. But even as he prepared to dive deeper, an unexpected revelation took root in his mind. This was the first step towards not just healing, but empowerment. He was ready to reclaim what had been overshadowed by his father's choices. His future. Dad, what if we take this one step further? What if we redefine our relationship? Not just as father and son, but as allies. He watched as his father appeared to wrestle with the terms, the gravity of Jamari's proposal sinking in. With every exchange, the air crackled with the potential for transformation, one that could reshape their identities and futures. As the tension wound tighter, Jamari anticipated the repercussions of the path he was forging. Would it lead to reconciliation or further estrangement? But one thing was certain. Whether they emerged together or apart, this encounter would set the stage for the chapters yet unwritten. What lay ahead was unknown, but it began to unfold before him, shimmering with possibilities. Would his father embrace this chance, or would fear drive them further apart? The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, neither willing to break first. Jamari watched his father, searching for any sign that this was more than just a moment of tumultuous emotion, a prelude to something deeper. The cafe around them continued its symphony, oblivious to the seismic shift taking place at their small table. His father's brows knitted together in thought, and for an instant, Jamari felt a flicker of hope buoying his spirit. The potential for change sparked in the depth of their troubled dynamic. Jamari, his father finally began, voice edged as he calculated his next words. I'm not sure how to be an ally when I've spent so long being absent. Maybe that's where we can start, Jamari suggested softly but firmly. We acknowledge the past, the pain, and begin to learn how to support each other moving forward. It's not just your journey, it's mine too. The weight of his own words surprised him. They felt imbued with a newfound assertiveness, a power he had yet to fully embrace. What do you envision? His father inquired, the cautious skepticism tailing his question. Jamari sensed an opening, a chance to bridge the gap that had divided them. This wasn't just an invitation to discuss logistics. It was an entree into collaboration, a realm previously denied to him. I want to explore all of it. your motivations, your past choices, and why they impacted us this way. We can share that burden. It doesn't have to be all on you anymore, Jamari asserted, his voice gaining strength. If we redefine who we are to one another, I can become someone who knows you, not just the title of father, but the man behind it. His father's gaze softened slightly, a breath of possibility wafting between them. Jamari felt a rush of determination. He was tackling a behemoth of history and emotion, but the map was becoming clearer. As daunting as it was, this act of reclaiming agency was tethered to his personal development. He'd always been the shadow in his father's light, but now he yearned to illuminate his own existence. Your career is part of your identity, but it can't overshadow every other part of who you are, he continued. I want to understand the man who chased ambition, but more than that, what is it to be a father who put that above family? Let us confront that. Jamari watched his father wrestle visibly with the weight of that revelation. There was something liberating in sharing the intensity of his thoughts, a release that came from finally voicing feelings long ensconced in fear. He could feel each word unraveling the tightly wrapped rope of resentment that had snared him for years. Most of my choices, I believe they were correct. I was misguided, his father said at last, a hint of vulnerability seeping through the bravado. But you are right. My ambition became a shield, perhaps a weapon. Maybe it's time we change the terms of this engagement, Jamari replied, grateful to see his father responding, however hesitantly. We could create a relationship defined by mutual respect instead of distance. For the first time, they caught each other's gaze with a clarity that had been absent before, a shared recognition of the spaces they had occupied within one another's lives. Jamari felt the heaviness of his past beginning to lift, replaced with the fragility of hope and the scent of possibility. As they navigated their way through the complexities of emotions, Jamari felt fiercely alive. He realized, however, that truth came at a cost he was willing to pay to forge the connection he so desperately wanted. The cafe, once a backdrop to his anxiety, now hummed a different tune, a melody of potential renewal. He braced himself for whatever confrontation lay ahead, even as the dialogue transitioned into uncharted territory. Would they both be able to face the repercussions of what lay ahead together, without the baggage that had tainted their relationship for so long? Or would this be another defining moment that sent them sailing into stormier waters? Jamari leaned in closer, his heart racing as he prepared to delve deeper, seeking answers and simultaneously challenging the fears lingering beneath the surface. Dad, what if we set rules for our new relationship? Beyond forgiveness, beyond blame. Let us map out a future together, not just as family, but as allies. He could see the flicker of surprise in his father's eyes, and with it came the weight of realization this was not just a conversation, it was a redesign of their future together. But before his father could respond, a distant urgency emerged within Jamari, seeding an unbidden question. What's the one thing holding you back from being present? The air crackled with anticipation, his father's expression shifting. Would he answer truthfully, stepping beyond the precipice of his professional defenses? Jamari sensed that the time for half-truths had passed. Clarity was necessary for both of them to reshape their narrative going forward. The sharp intake of breath from his father echoed in Jamari's ears. The question hung heavily in the air, like a storm cloud ready to burst. His father's fidgeting hands gripped the edge of the table, betraying the rigidity of an imposing figure suddenly stripped of his armor. Jamari leaned back slightly, still maintaining eye contact, his heart pounding. This was the moment where words became catalysts for change, where the past could shatter and a new reality could emerge. Dad, he pressed softly, I want to understand what weighs on you. We can't build something genuine without facing the obstacles that created our distance in the first place. His father hesitated, his gaze darting toward the window where raindrops streaked against the glass like wild thoughts in a chaotic mind. It's complicated, Jamari, he finally uttered, voice laden with the gravity of the secrets he had carried for far too long. Complicated how? We lived through a world of complications together. Just like you put your career first, we'll have to prioritize honesty here, Jamari reminded him. An unexpected fire ignited in him, blazing where self-doubt once flickered. His father's eyes locked onto his, and Jamari felt a wave of determination flowing between them. It was time to unearth the truth, but the stakes felt impossibly high. Would his father share the burdens he had long kept hidden, or retreat again into the safety of silence? My work demands a lot from me, his father began, experiencing a hesitant unraveling. Being the U.S. Attorney General, it can be consuming. Each decision feels monumental. Every choice has consequences. I thought that by being away, I was providing for you and your mother. And what about being present for us as people? Jamari interjected, feeling both the sting of old wounds and the hope for new understanding. You think your absence can be replaced by money and status? Families don't thrive in that way. His father's expression tightened, the battle between pride and guilt playing out across his features. I didn't see it that way. I felt I was doing what was right, what was expected. I couldn't afford to let personal feelings interfere with my responsibilities. Jamari's resolve hardened. But your personal feelings matter. They matter to me. I want to know you, not just your title. Can we begin to mend this? He noticed vulnerability creeping back into his father's expression, layers of defenses starting to peel away. You're not a child to me, his father finally said, his voice laden with emotion. I hope you understand the weight of what I do. I do, but understanding isn't enough. You're right that I'm not a child. I'm a young adult who wants to build a future independently of any shadows you cast. With that statement, Jamari felt a shift within himself, a reclamation of power that had long been entrenched in resentment. This dialogue was not just about confronting the past. It was about establishing a foundation where they could both thrive. Let us promise to be more than titles, more than roles we played. Let us build a bond. Jamari softened, sensing the shift in his father's demeanor, the veil of authority crumbling. Yes, I see that now. His father's voice shook with the admission. This journey is going to require both of us striving toward the same goal. It's time to confront my shortcomings and what that did to you. Jamari felt a surge of warmth, igniting a sense of belief that things could change. They could redefine everything about their relationship. But deep down, he understood that confronting his own identity would inevitably involve reconciling with the implications of his father's choices. Then let us do it together, Dad, he said, a surge of hope buoying his spirit. With a newfound openness glistening in his father's eyes, they each began a mental mapping of their shared journey forward. Yet, within Jamari, a nagging thought persisted. Could they truly navigate the murky waters of their past and emerge stronger? Or was the tempest merely veiled beneath an illusion of tranquility? The thought rattled him. What if being allies meant confronting deeper truths? Truths he feared might fracture the newly forming bond. As they settled into this newfound understanding, Jamari felt a pulse of urgency within. He needed to prepare himself for fragments of truth. He might unearth the truths that could either carve the path to healing or send them spiraling back. A deep breath escaped him as he pondered their next conversation, convinced that all they had built together might rest on just one more courageous question. Dad, he ventured, what sacrifices have you made that haunt you the most? Jamari's heart raced. The weight of his question hung in the air, charged with the tremors of unsteady ground beneath him. Silence enveloped the room as his father's gaze dropped, the flicker of emotion crossing his face intensifying Jamari's sense of both urgency and dread. What could possibly lurk behind the mask of power? The only sound was the persistent tapping of raindrops against the window, a reminder of the storm outside, mirroring the turbulence inside. His father broke that stillness, a quiet exhale escaping his lips. Jamari, sometimes the hardest sacrifices are not the ones you see on the surface. It's the everyday choices that ripple through a family. Jamari felt something tighten in his chest. Everyday choices? What do you mean? The answer felt precariously poised to either hurt or heal. I've had to choose between my career and being there for you both. The late nights at the office, the missed events, the family dinners. My ambition carved out time I could never reclaim. His father's voice trembled, revealing vulnerability woven beneath authority, a revelation juxtaposed against the man who made decisions that could change lives in an instant. Jamari had always thought of his father as impenetrable. Yet, seated across from him, he saw the cracks. But Dad, how does that justify your absence? You were there for people you didn't even know, but those closest to you, you were missing. A flinch crossed his father's face, as if struck by the truth of his son's words. It is not that simple, he pressed, his tone firming slightly. I wanted to be that image of success for you. I thought if I excelled, it would inspire you, show you what you could achieve. By making me feel unwanted, the sharpness of Jamari's words pierced through the quiet. Do you not realize that being a success in your career didn't define me? I want to be proud of my father, not just his title. I wanted you at home, Dad. The room pulsed with tension. In that moment, Jamari saw the layers of emotion unravel within his father, a complex web of regret, pride, and yearning for validation. Jamari, his father started, but Jamari interrupted, unwilling to let the conversation lose momentum. What if we start to redefine success? Together. The thought ignited within him how to bridge this fractured relationship. If I offered up my voice, my feelings, would you be willing to listen? Would you allow yourself to be vulnerable? His father was still contemplating the offer, layers of emotion playing across his face, realization, fear, but also a glimmer of hope. You mean a different kind of dialogue? One where I listen as much as I speak. Exactly. Maybe I could help you see what I've learned in the shadow of your ambitions. Maybe we can tackle this as a unit rather than separate entities. Jamari felt a pulse of excitement surging within him. The potential for their connection to evolve seemed tantalizingly close. But what do you want from this, really? His father asked. Skepticism mingled with curiosity. Jamari took a moment to collect his thoughts. I want my voice to matter as much as yours does. I want us to create a legacy not rooted in titles, but in love and presence. I want to know who you are outside of your job. With a single nod, his father began a fragile journey toward understanding both of himself and his son's needs. Let us explore this life none of us truly defined, his father conceded softly, a new tenderness cracking through his once imposing hands. Jamari felt the shift once more. He could sense the barriers beginning to crumble as his father opened a door he'd never thought possible. The air was thick with a sincerity that suffused them both, urging bravery to take root. But just as uncertainty began to dissipate, Jamari's heart sank with a new fear. Was this real? The conversation opened a floodgate of questions beyond their exchange. What if confronting the past unearthed more demons than he could reconcile? What if their raw honesty transported them into territories they weren't prepared to navigate? Dad, he faltered, the urgency of his next words clawing at him. What about the relationships you sacrificed for your career? The ones you lost? Did any of them matter to you? As the moment stretched, Jamari braced himself for a revelation that could challenge everything he thought he knew about his father and himself. Jamari's heart raced with anticipation, the question reverberating in the laden silence that enveloped them. He was aware that this inquiry had the potential to uproot the narrative of his father's life, to expose the chasms created by years of neglect and ambition. Yet he stood firm, his resolve solidifying by the moment. His father's face hardened, as if he were preparing for a battle of words. Regrets they come with the territory, he replied, avoiding Jamari's piercing gaze. His voice, once resonating with authority, now trembled slightly, betraying his emotional landscape, a vast expanse conquered by pride, but littered with remnants of loss. Territory? Jamari pressed, the fire in his belly kindling. You didn't just lose relationships. You lost who you were, the man I hoped to know. The words sliced through the atmosphere, and he could see his father's defenses waver, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the accolades. I thought ambition was the way to show you strength, how to build a future, the senator replied, his tone now layered with exhaustion and regret. But now he hesitated, wrestling with an unfamiliar vulnerability. Now I'm questioning if I built a fortress around me that kept you out. Jamari's chest felt lighter. For the first time, the dialogue was resonating with authenticity. You didn't just create barriers, you enforced them. I want to understand your world, but first, I need you to understand mine. He felt a surge of purpose, a guiding thread leading him to this moment. The rain continued its relentless cadence against the window, acting as a backdrop to the burgeoning honesty of this exchange. What fears did you have that led you to prioritize your career over your family? Jamari asked, his voice steadier now. I need to understand what drove those choices. His father's expression morphed, struggles etched into the wrinkles of his forehead as he wrestled with the truth. I feared inadequacy. He confessed quietly, his defenses lowering. In a position like mine, you feel the pressure to succeed, to be right, to maintain an image. It was easier to chase accolades than tackle the fear of failure in love and family. With each word, Jamari imagined the years of isolation his father must have endured, balancing expectations like a tightrope walker. But acknowledging that fear gave Jamari a newfound clarity into his own insecurities. But what if we redefine that fear together? His voice firmed with determination. What if strength lies in vulnerability, in sharing those burdens instead of carrying them individually? His father looked up abruptly, startled yet intrigued. You really believe that? I do, Jamari replied, emboldened. My voice is just as important as yours. But to be truly heard, both of us need to confront our fears. We need a conversation that pushes us to our limits. The room felt intimate now, almost sacred. His father shifted, resting his hands on the table, aligning their energies. I've spent so long thinking I had to show you the world through achievements, but maybe I need to show you who I am instead. Jamari's heart soared at this prospect. Let us start with the losses, then your lost relationships, your fears. Facing them might be hard, but we'll face them together. As his father nodded slowly, the air thickened with possibilities. Yet a restless doubt seeped in, like shadows creeping into light. Was this shift in their dialogue merely a fleeting promise of change, or could they genuinely rebuild the foundation of their relationship from the ground up? He couldn't shake the weight of uncertainty. What if we unravel more than we can fix? Jamari's voice wavered, threading vulnerability into his brave facade. His father considered this, brows knitting together. That's a risk we must take, Jamari. Growth doesn't come without discomfort. But are you willing to walk this path with me, no matter how difficult? I'm ready if you are, Jamari answered, a wave of courage washing over him. No more hiding behind titles. Just us, facing reality. But deep within, another question loomed ominously: what truth from his father's past would emerge in their candid exploration? Jamari couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the precipice of a revelation that could alter everything. As the rain subsided, a calmness washed over the room. Yet underlying it all was a tension, a quiet anticipation of unearthing what lay beneath the surface, a truth that threatened to reshape the very narrative of their lives. As the days passed, Jamari Johnson embraced the tangible transformation his life was undergoing. A few weeks after that pivotal meeting with his father, he found himself standing in a packed lecture hall, a sense of assuredness coursing through him. He was no longer just navigating the complex waterways of his personal history. He was charting new territories, fueled by his newfound resolve to pursue a career in law and a deeper understanding of himself. His experiences and conversations with his father began to crystallize into clarity. No longer shackled by resentment, Jamari learned to view his father's absence not solely as a void, but as a catalyst for his growth. He had taken the reins of his own destiny, bearing the weight of expectation, yet ready to shatter the mold that had once suffocated him. The lecture that afternoon was on criminal justice reform, an area close to his heart, and he found himself engaged not only as a student, but as a burgeoning advocate for change. The professor's discussion ignited a fire within him, driving home ideals he had begun to cherish. With each case study presented, Jamari articulated his thoughts with confidence and authority, proving that his voice was crucial in a dialogue that had traditionally marginalized figures like him. As he brainstormed ideas for an upcoming debate competition, he felt a conviction swell. The concept of justice was no longer just an abstract idea. It was a space in which he could stand, equipped and ready to advocate for those who felt unheard. Just a few days later, Jamari was invited to present his viewpoints at a local school board meeting concerning reforms that would address disparities in disciplinary actions among students. This was his moment and opportunity to take the lessons learned and to confront systemic issues directly. The butterflies of anxiety flitted about in his stomach, but he welcomed them. They were a reminder of how far he had come. As he stood before the board, prepared to challenge the status quo, he realized he was no longer merely the son of a U.S. Attorney General. He was forging his own identity and narrative. Jamari delivered his speech with a blend of passion and poise. He spoke about the need for accountability and justice, not just within the walls of the courtroom, but also within the very fabric of the community he hoped to uplift. His presence filled the room. This was the bold step he had envisioned. When he finished, the applause that erupted felt like a warm embrace of validation. His thoughts raced. This engagement was not just professional, it was personal. This was the reclaiming of his story, a narrative he had always deemed overshadowed. The school board members, while initially skeptical, began to question established protocols, and as he exited the meeting, the atmosphere shifted. Jamari felt recognized, competent, and ready to write a new chapter with the tools he now understood he possessed. Months sped by, and during one of their regular conversations, Jamari invited his father to attend his public speaking engagements. This time, instead of fear cloaked in uncertainty, he felt a different kind of thrill. His father, surprisingly supportive, accepted without hesitation. On the day of the event, the hall was packed. As Jamari took the stage, his gaze met his father's, who sat proudly among the audience. The moment felt surreal. It was like stitching together the frayed edges of their relationship while standing firmly in his own. After delivering an impassioned plea for equity and justice, Jamari not only felt accomplished, but profoundly connected to his roots anew. The applause was thunderous, but more importantly, he saw affirmation in his father's eyes, the acknowledgement of his son as a figure in his own right, someone who was making waves beyond just the surname he carried. Afterward, they shared a quiet yet significant moment, standing amidst the group of engaged supporters. His father, visibly moved, said, "I didn't understand the impact that my absence would have. But watching you today, I can see so clearly. The man you've become, and it fills me with pride." Jamari felt a swell of respect in return, marked by an understanding of their transformed relationship, built not solely on blood, but also on empathy, honesty, and a shared journey of forging their places in the world. In his heart, he knew he had transformed from the boy longing for connection into a young man who could advocate for himself and others. The relationship with his father had matured not simply into forgiveness, but into an alliance echoing the resolve to challenge what was once plagued by silence. Jamari had conquered his doubts and emerged as a passionate architect of his destiny. His tale was layered, but it was undoubtedly his own, defined not by the past choices of his father, but by the tenacity and ambition that burned brightly within him. Jamari had found his voice and purpose. He was ready to take the next steps toward becoming a formidable force in law and social justice, determined to ensure no one else felt the stagnation of voicelessness he once had. Looking towards the future, Jamari smiled at the possibilities. He had reclaimed not only his narrative, but was carving out a legacy that would ripple beyond his relationship with his father. Now was the time to move forward, armed with knowledge, confidence, and the undeniable strength that comes from spiritual and emotional reconciliation. For all those reading Jamari's story, remember that your narrative is yours to define. You have the power to transform your life and build connections based on purpose and authenticity. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.